Hey everyone, thank you for joining. We are live back with a brand new episode of the Sens Hour podcast. We are back with Derek Lee, and I think this is what, your third or fourth episode in a row that you're joining us?
Yeah, something like that. It's been a slice.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. There's been a lot of Sens news to talk about. And I mean, there's now a lot of hockey news considering the things that are going on in the Ontario Hockey League. They came out a couple weeks ago with their return to play. They wanted like a February startup. The WHL is starting up January 8th, and the Quebec League has already started. But the reason why that's important is that Lisa McLeod has been very adamant that there is no contact for the OHL, and on the surface, I feel like it's a questionable decision. But something that I don't think a lot of people know is that this is Ontario hockey. This isn't just the OHL. If you want the Ontario Hockey Federation in their whole return to play layout, it does mention like the no contact. The Carleton Place Canadians that play, I think, in the CCHL started up at the beginning of October with no contact kind of scrimmages. But I think it's important. Clearly it's important to a lot of people, the hitting and the contact. So you know what, Derek, what's your opinion on it? Because I've been very vocal on Twitter about how my opinions on it are. So what are yours?
Yeah, I noticed that, Shane. I think I probably have the opposite opinion where I think it's going to hurt the league and it's going to hurt the players developmentally. Hockey is just, to me, it's just not hockey if you don't have contact. I mean, I think of a player like Quinton Byfield, who I think we are all, looking at potentially as one of our picks going to LA. If they choose to develop him now in the Ontario Hockey League in Sudbury, and they want him to work on his physicality, which is probably the missing component to his game for a player at his size, he really can't do that this year. So you might look at those isolated situations and choose to develop your player in the NHL rather than sending them down to the OHL. So I know it's out of the league's control. It's a government thing. I did see that Doug Ford just commented on this, and he is going to look into it ahead of league play for the OHL specifically. So hopefully something's able to get done at the government level, allowing contact. To me, I don't get it. It doesn't make sense that naturally when you're playing hockey, you have to make contact. It's just part of the sport. So I don't see how that's any more detrimental to COVID numbers. If that's the case, don't play at all.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I've been vocal in the sense that, like, I don't agree with the decision. I think it's ridiculous. The NHL, and I mean, with football going on, there hasn't really been many cases linked to the actual, like, to contact. Lisa McLeod talked about how, the outbreak in the Q was the reason for this decision. But realistically, like, I don't really see that being because of contact. I think it's kind of narrow-minded to be like, oh, it's because they're hitting each other that they're getting all these tests. I don't think that's the case. I think people just broke protocols. One person wasn't tested quickly enough. There's so many other variables that could have been in play, and I think it's narrow-minded for Lisa McLeod to kind of be like, no contact because of the Quebec League getting this outbreak. But personally, I think it's great for development because we're going to see, we could have the potential of seeing a lot more Mark Stones. Because, we both watch Mark Stone in Ottawa for the number of years. He isn't very good. He doesn't take the body. He doesn't take the puck by taking the body. He uses his stick. And I think if you ask a lot of hockey people is what's the biggest challenge for players coming into the league? And it's how to use your stick properly. And I think if you were to get rid of contact, you would see players kind of increase that skill. You would see players being able to take the puck away by playing the stick properly and getting in the shooting lanes. And you wouldn't see these unnecessary hits that lead to these big goals. And when I feel like and I don't agree with the idea. Oh, if they don't hit for 4 months, it's going to cause problems at the next level. I can see the worry that okay, it can be spun in we had really good successful like 4 months of hockey without contact. It proves that we don't need contact in hockey. Injuries are down, this, that, and the other thing. And I think that's what more people are really worried about subconsciously over 4 months of them playing hockey. I think they're worried of like the snowball effect.
Right. And I see to your point, like I see, players will have to learn how to use their sticks more effectively. But I do worry about the players where, their bread and butter is physicality, and really they wouldn't be in the position they're in without it. There are some players that aren't very physical, and Mark Stone is a prime example of a big player who you would think is pretty physical, but he's just someone that developed a knack for using his stick. But I think he's such an anomaly that it's hard to compare other players to Mark Stone. His overall hockey sense is just completely off the charts, and I think that helps him use his stick positioning so much more. But I do kind of worry developmentally if I know it's only 4 months, but if players just develop these bad habits of not taking the body at all in areas where they need to. And the other point I have is just that I just don't see how this makes sense. Like, I don't know how that's any more detrimental and how that's going to cause any more numbers versus taking the body. Like, if you're going to play, and if you're not going to play, don't play.
Oh, 100% agree. I think, I worry that, these players are going to be off for 14 months. How detrimental would it be for a guy like Shane Wright to just lose a year and a half of hockey? He's out in camp for Team Canada, which is great. But, if you had to look at a player like anyone who's draft eligible in 21 or 22, losing a year and a half, that contact or no contact, that's detrimental to their development. And I think if you're the OHL, you have to look at it as, we're starting late. We're starting in February. So either that means you allow players to go now and just say, if there's openings in the Western Hockey League or in the Quebec League that they want you there, or if you're signed to a team and they want you to go over and they can loan you overseas, that's probably what the OHL has to look at. But realistically, that's probably not the case. And you have to decide, like, is being off for 18 months really going to help? Or do we suck it up and play 4 months, maybe 5 months max of contactless hockey? I think most players and personnel would probably take the 4 or 5 months of contactless hockey over sitting at home for 18 months.
Right, because at least it's something organized, and they're at least getting games in and getting reps in. I think regardless, it hurts developmentally for a kid like Shane Wright, like you mentioned. And I do wonder if there will be like a huge influx of players going to Europe, trying to get on a European team. I know the leagues are already going out there, but perhaps that's something that a player highly touted like Shane Wright would consider.
Yeah, and I mean, it's going to affect the league no matter what. If they buckle down on this whole we want contact and they end up not playing, they look. I think they look like the bad guy. It's the one of those like lesser of two evils. You have a choice to make, and you're putting one aspect of the game above the game itself. How does that look? Personally, I just want them to play. I think it's just these players most of them haven't played since March of 2020, and they probably if you look at Quinton Byfield and like Perfetti, Rossi signed with Minnesota and has been sent to SSC in Switzerland, but Byfield hasn't been sent anywhere. Lafreniere hasn't been sent anywhere. So luckily Byfield's going to the World Junior camp in middle of November. So there's that. But like there's players that are sitting here being like, we just want to play. We don't care if there's contact. And here's the thing. The game has gotten faster. I think we can all agree that the game speed has increased quite a bit. You don't see the same kind of contact that we saw like 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Yeah, we're not talking about Scott Stevens on Paul Kariya stuff.
No, and I mean, how many times have we seen Connor McDavid beat someone who's trying to go for the hit? I think, and personally, I think sometimes hitting the idea of hitting or making that big hit kind of unravels your defensive mindset. I mean, we saw it in the Stanley Cup playoffs where a defenseman pitches to make the hit, they give up a 2-on-1 and they score, right? If you can't make that play, you're going to be better defensively. And I think as much as it sucks the no contact, you have to make, if that's the case, you have to make the most of it. And I think players would benefit, especially defenders, might benefit more. Yeah, it would suck for the guys who do rely on that physical build, but I think it also eliminates those guys that, only rely on physicality and that they come up here and then they're getting, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but, prime examples are guys like Eric Gryba and Ben Harper who rely heavily on their size. And if they can't use their size, they're not very good. So is that necessarily a bad thing in the long run? I don't know. I don't think it is.
Yeah, I see your point. I see the counterpoints that people are making. I think, like you said, at the end of the day, we just want these kids playing hockey and they just want to play hockey. Whatever that looks like at the end of the day, it is what it is. It's unprecedented times here. So hopefully we could just see these kids play some hockey in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that they can figure something out. They have until February. So, like, they have until the end of January because I think training camp opens January 23rd. And, I mean, also, what does this do with the OHL and the NHL, right? Because if you're not going to allow the OHL to have contact, are you going to allow the Toronto Marlies and the Belleville Senators to have contact, or are they going to have to find another place to play? And then what about the Senators and Leafs? Like, are you going to allow the NHL to have contact in Ontario, or are they going to have to go to Montreal or whatever to play? So it's just like you're setting like there's a trend that you're setting if you say that the OHL can't have contact, but you're like, oh yeah, well the AHL and the NHL can. Like there's a double standard there, and you have to. There's a fine line, and I think because of that, I think the OHL will have contact.
I agree. I think it's going to get sorted out. I think they're going to look at it and probably, see it for what it is, which is kind of silly. If you're allowing them to play, you're going to have board battles no matter what. You're going to have close quarter play. It's the game of hockey. If you look at it as a whole, there's going to be contact, and I really don't see the point in eliminating in having the game play with no contact. Like if it's ruled that it's unsafe to play, then it's unsafe to play. But if you're adding these kind of gimmicky little rules, I just don't see it happening. I think it's going to go, it's going to get overturned, and I think we'll see contact.
100%. And I remember seeing a comment. I can't remember if it was just like someone on Twitter being like, oh, or if it was actually like a source. I can't find it, but there was a comment that I saw saying that they're going to go to either they're talking about going to 3-on-3 or 4-on-4 so they can spread out the players on the bench a little bit more. And I saw it and I was like, this is ridiculous. Like if they went to that, they may as well just not play.
Yeah. Again, not hockey. Like we're talking about, 3-on-3, something that they added recently for overtimes. And again, that's not recreating what an actual hockey game is like. Even 4-on-4 for the whole game would be, goal scoring would be unbelievable. I'm sure it'd be entertaining, but you'd have games like 12-10 if you're going 3-on-3.
Here's the thing. Personally, I think they talk about increasing scoring. A lot of people have been watching European hockey. What about the possibilities of turning into like a hybrid ice model where it's a little bit bigger, not as big as international, but definitely a little bit wider? I think it would create that personally, just making it a little bit wider would be fantastic for a guy like for playmakers and those guys with burning speed that can just kind of get around defenders. It would create more competition. It would create more offense without decreasing the safety of a goaltender.
I think that's a much better idea. Maybe you should talk to some people about that, because I think, honestly, I'm in love with that idea. I think, like you said, not necessarily an international ice side surface, but something in the middle, like a hybrid ice surface, just allowing players with more space. I've been a fan of something like that for years. I think the game is moving towards skill. I have no problem with increasing, the ice size and allowing our players like a Tim Stützle to, take full advantage of the extra room that he would have out there. I think it would add to the fun factor.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to defend a guy like McDavid with that extra little width of ice and just seeing him blow by you, and you're like, I tried.
Yeah, it would highlight those skilled players even more, and I think that's something the NHL already struggles to do versus leagues like the NBA or other leagues where the star players are much more in the forefront. This would be something that would benefit the league, I think, in the long run too. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it would just cost a little bit because you would have to retrofit all your rinks, but I think it's something that, in the long run would, and it would also help European prospects, right? Because I think especially defensemen and goaltenders who are so used to the bigger ice, your reaction time and your play is very different than what it is in North America.
And yeah, goaltenders, I mean, the whole angle is different, right? Like, you're playing on a different ice surface like that. Your whole positioning is different. So I agree. It would eliminate that transition time.
Yeah, and I mean, we've been talking a little bit about Byfield and whatnot going to the World Junior Camp that I believe is scheduled for like starts November 23rd or something like that, goes until December 13th. Ottawa prospect, our third pick with the Islanders pick of the 2022 draft, Ridley Craig, was announced as one of the invitees to the camp. I think from what I've seen, he's kind of more of a long shot, especially with Kirby Dach being loaned. And then there's talk of Lafreniere being loaned by the Rangers because they feel like there's no set date. Getting him on the ice would be paramount. Apparently, there's supposed to be a decision sometime next week if that's actually going to happen. I don't know, but it's a good thing to see that Ridley Craig has been at least invited to the camp.
Yeah, it's nice to see Greg invited, and I think we are just on the topic of physicality, and I mean, what a perfect example right there of a player who thrives off that physicality. So it'll be interesting too to see if the World Juniors allows the physical play, because I think if they do, then perhaps someone like Ridley Craig, and I think he is a long shot, like you said, but perhaps someone like him could make the roster as a role player on the fourth line. It's definitely an interesting proposal, and I like things that Greg brings to a team like Team Canada, who's mostly going to be regarded as a skilled team. And they always do take, every year they take one or two players that add something a little bit different. So perhaps that gives him a bit of an advantage.
Yeah, and I mean, it sounds like Tourney likes what he brings. Could slot in as like a third or fourth line kind of guy, penalty killer. Probably won't see many minutes, but I think he'll have an impact nonetheless if he's on the team. But one player, we talk about Team Canada. Our second round pick, literally a couple of picks after Ridley Craig, Robbie Järventie, is lighting it up in Liga. 11 points in 12 games, 5 goals, 6 assists. This guy went from a who to when is he coming over kind of prospect in a month. It's ridiculous that he's come in as a 19-year-old. I think there's talk he's going to be on Team Finland's World Junior roster. So another guy to look at when it comes to the World Juniors. But man, Robbie Järventie is just killing it right now over in Finland.
I'm so glad you brought him up. I mean, just watching kind of his rise all of a sudden out of nowhere. This kid just turned 19. He was one of the youngest players. So to see him rise this quickly, I mean, it's insane. He's putting these points up in the number one league in Finland. What is it, 11 points in 12 games? Is that what it is?
Yeah, and he's a plus 10, which I mean, I don't really put a lot of into plus minus, but like that's like when you're a 19-year-old playing in a men's league and you have 11 points, that's impressive. Like it's not like he has like 30 points and he's a plus 10. He's literally a plus 10 with 11 points. That's ridiculous.
And isn't he exactly what the team's missing right now? Like that goal scoring, if he's able to provide that at the NHL level and be like a 20 to 30 goal scorer, that's kind of exactly what Ottawa's missing in their lineup for the long term. So, when they first made the pick, I was in the same boat saying, who is this guy? And we passed up, all these other players. And now it's like, okay, they knew exactly what they were doing. This guy looks unbelievable.
Yeah, and I mean, I can't believe how and I mean he was playing third, like he's not even a top 6 guy.
No, he's getting like third line minutes and still putting up those points.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Like he's listed, I think the other day he was listed as the third, like right wing 3. And like that's ridiculous. He can play both sides, which is fantastic. And I think he's the guy that should slot in. Could be your second, in the future, could be our second line left winger beside like a Stützle and Batherson, at least until Dadonov moves on, and then we get another. Like it's just we could see a top 6 with Sokurov because the team seems high on him.
Yeah.
There was they asked him if he wanted to go back overseas on a loan, and he said no. He'd rather stay in Canada and train with Batherson, which honestly I'm totally okay with. And you have Robbie Järventie, you have Tkachuk, Sokurov, Norris. There's so many possibilities for a future top 6. It's ridiculous, and I think people knock our scouting staff. It's a small scouting staff, but I feel like that just puts a assurance on you exactly what you're getting from players. Instead of having like 20 different people being like, oh, here, you have like 10 or 5 players being like, okay, like we've watched this kid. We know exactly what we're getting from this kid. And I think that realistically does a lot more like that. That's a lot more beneficial in my opinion.
Yeah, that's an interesting take on it. I mean, I do see it in another way as well, where, I kind of wish that we had some of the finances that teams like the Leafs have, where they have the ability to scout every single player in the draft and they could send guys over there. So do I feel like we maybe passed up some talent in this draft? I don't know. It's so early to say. But if you look at, drafts in recent years in the past, we're already seeing some risers that initially when they made the pick, we were like, really? Like you picked this guy over this guy? And, Pinto's a prime example of that. But, Colin White really is another one recently. But yeah, I'm all for seeing some of these guys. That I love the Sokolov pick, overager, 20-year-old, just brings a ton of personality. And yeah, he could be a professional hockey player right away. So I do like some of the swings that they made, and Järventie is another one that's really growing on me.
Oh, 100%. I mean, it can go either way, right? Because if you have a big scouting staff and you have busts, you have more busts than fines. Like you're looked at, okay, you're overspending. The quality you're getting for the money you're spending isn't very good. And then you have Ottawa where like lower spending, but the quality you're getting is relatively high. You look at the late round gems we've had, Batherson being a 4th round pick, Stone, Pajot, Hoffman, all these guys being, late round picks. I think we're one of the teams that probably gets the most money's worth in terms of their scouting department.
Yeah. And it really is such a surprising thing when they're so underfinanced compared to some of these other teams. So, at some point you stop looking at it as a luck thing and you start looking at, what are they doing right?
Yeah, and I mean, it looks like player development's on the right track. So hopefully, Trent Mann and Sean Don, what Trent Mann has going on in Belleville is fantastic. Clark MacArthur, Jesse Winchester, and Sean Donovan have been able to do last year. We saw the rise of some, Norris and Formanton in Belleville, and Nick Paul, Batherson. They've all started to increase. Kachuk. I think our player development staff has been has put together a very good program for whatever they're doing. I think it's just bright. Like our future in Ottawa is relatively bright when it comes to the prospect side of things. But bringing up Robbie Arventi, we have to look at his teammate Lassie Thompson, who kind of seems to be stagnant in Finland right now. He was scratched one of their previous games. He was the 7th defenseman for a game like 2 days ago. He from all the reports I've been able to find, he looks relatively stagnant. He kind of tailed off after the World Juniors. I haven't watching European games, haven't really been able to due to work and other things. But I've also seen people saying that he's fallen out of favor of the coach because that he didn't perform up to what they wanted him at the World Juniors as being the captain. And like, apparently there's so much interest. There's so many to this story that, people are already calling him a bust.
Yeah, it's way too early to make that proclamation. I think he's what, 20 years old?
Yeah, he just turned 20 this year.
Yeah, so I mean, it's way too early to call him a bust. I do see people like Joki Nevalainen who follows these Finnish prospects really closely, and I seen a tweet that said, Lassie Thompson has become a complete ghost out there. His minutes were reduced. I know he got scratched the other day, but he was only getting like 7 minutes a game at one point. So he's definitely fallen out of flavor, and I do think it happened after the World Juniors. He didn't have a real strong World Juniors, despite being the captain of the team. I think he really fell down that lineup as well. And kind of after that, I don't know if it kind of damaged his confidence or what happened. One thing I do know is that he has an incredibly hard shot. So if that's able to transfer anywhere along the lines, that could be something that Ottawa could use.
I definitely think he was expecting to come north this season, and I think he was excited for a fresh start. But because of COVID and whatnot, they're like, we want you playing, and he's like, okay. I don't think what we're seeing in Lassie Thompson is what we're going to get. I think when he comes over, he's going to play in Belleville. I think he'll give, because everything I've seen, he's also not really been given a role. And I think we saw it a lot in the World Juniors where he was kind of just expected to do everything, but he wasn't really given the supporting cast to do everything. And I think it reminds me a lot of how like we treated Ceci early in his career, where like he was a two-way defenseman in junior, but then we brought him up. He's like, hey, you're going to be the offensive guy. Like, you're going to be the puck mover on this line. And then, a couple of games later, he's like, hey, you're going to be the defensive guy on this line. And we just never, like, no one really let CC play his game. And that was at a very early part of his career. And I think it just damaged him for the rest of his, damage him for the rest of his career, unfortunately. And I think that's kind of what's happening in Finland with Thompson, is that like they're not playing him in a role, like they're not playing him consistently in a role to help him kind of get his confidence back. They're like, okay, we're going to put you here, we're going to put you here, but if you make a mistake, we're going to pull you. He seems to have a really short leash, and that's not something you can have with a prospect.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see how much hate you receive for that Cody Ceci comparable to Lassie Thompson. But it is what it is. I agree with what you're saying. Like it is along the lines of development. And I think in Belleville, like you said, right now we have much better development than we had when Cody Ceci was here.
Agreed.
So hopefully they can recognize, where Lassie Thompson is comfortable, and we'll see the rise of Lassie Thompson whenever Belleville gets going in February or whatever they're aiming for.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, I think people forget that if you look at when Cody Ceci was drafted, I think it was 2012. I think there was 1 year in that mix. We just had like 3 first-round picks, and they were all busts. They were Shane Prince, Matt Pumple, and I can't remember. There was another guy, and they were just all busts, and they were all like within like that 3-4 year span. Curtis Lazar kind of slotted in there, and they were just all busts. They just never lived up to their potential, and unfortunately, like it wasn't until I think 2016 is where we kind of saw the script, and I think that's kind of where we're seeing an issue with Logan Brown is because of that. That he was at the beginning of the development restruction. Boucher didn't really like him, didn't really see him, like didn't really want him at camp. And I think it was the same thing with Nick Paul. Like never really gave him any direction, and the development team wasn't really like they didn't have much direction. And it wasn't really until Belleville came, like Binghamton moved to Belleville, that our development has kind of improved greatly. Like it's improved dramatically.
Yeah, in Logan's case, I think a player that got kind of labeled as a lazy player that lacked the motivation and intensity right off the hop has hurt him ever since. Like you said, I think he was there for the Boucher days and a much different developmental team that they have now. And he started kind of throwing shots back at the Senators by using his agent this past season. Suggesting that he didn't get any opportunity. I think it's good that you brought that up because I wanted to ask you this. Do you think Logan Brown is going to be here come camp?
I think so. I think he's shown glimpses of his actual potential. It's just a matter of him being able to take control of this. Like, I think he was kind of given an unfortunate hand. It's the same thing with Brandstrom, right? Like our team last year wasn't very good. And I think if you're looking at a developmental stage, like he's not a Kachuk. He isn't a Shabbat. Like I think that's pretty clear. When he was up here playing top 6 minutes, he was producing. Like, he was making plays. He was driving plays. He was great on the power play. His passing is incredible. It was just the fact that like our team around him wasn't good. Same thing with Brandstrom. Is like Brandstrom, we didn't have the finishing talent that neither player needed. If Shabbat had a down year in terms of like overall play, I think if given the shot, I think Logan Brown could be a number 1 center, number 2 center. It's going to be interesting to see if he's given a shot. If there's an offer on the table that includes him that you really can't say no to, you're so deep at center right now that I don't think you can you say no. But I think there has to be an offer that it's kind of like you can't, like if you turn this down, you're dumb. I don't think he's not a make it or break it deal, like prospect in terms of a deal, but I don't think they're going to actively shop him.
Yeah, I don't think he's worth very much of anything right now anyway. But I do kind of wonder if he does make it to camp, especially with where things left off. And if you listen to any kind of media appearance that Ottawa makes, they're quick to point out the players that they liked from last year. And Logan Brown's name never comes up in that conversation. So I think he'll have to work extra hard if he wants a roster spot. But I also think he needs to be an NHL player this year. There's nothing more this kid has to prove at the American Hockey League level. Unless you're sending him there to specifically work on his skating and his speed. But that's something he's been working on now for, how many years? I think this is the make it or break it year for Logan Brown. And if it doesn't work out, I do believe he will be shopped.
See, I think I look at Logan Brown a lot like I look at Nick Paul. And Nick Paul was given blind direction. When he was sent down at the beginning of last season, if I remember correctly, he basically said that this was the first time that he felt confident of what he needed to work on when he was sent down. He felt like this is the first time like someone has told me the specific things I need to work on to be back here. And he is, and he's now a full-time NHLer. He's on a one-way deal. Had a great year with Ottawa this year, and I think he was 24 when he was 24 when the season started. I think Logan Brown will kind of slot in at that same situation where he should have never been in camp to begin with. Under Boucher, like his draft year, he should have just been sent back down to Windsor. He should have never made it to camp. And I think as much as, it's one of those things where you look at like they don't want to pull a Zibanejad where they were moving him constantly up and down, weren't really giving him, and I mean, in fairness to the organization, Zibanejad had his own issues off the ice in terms of did he really want to be here and whatnot. But you look at Logan Brown, he's 22. Do you really want to move on from a 22-year-old 6'6" center who might just need a little bit more development?
Yeah,
like it's one of those things that like it's a catch-22. It's one of those things that can either work out really good for you or it can bite you in the butt.
Absolutely. And thankfully, Logan Brown is not a DJ in the offseason, much like Mika Zibanejad was.
No, like I just think that if we're patient with him, because like 2016, like realistically, if we're gonna give up on Logan Brown, we should give up. Like Christian Wolanin was drafted in 2015. He's only played 14 more games than Logan Brown has at the NHL level. And everyone's super high on Christian Wolanin, but it seems like Logan Brown is just put onto the wayside. And I think that's kind of where the draft position becomes important because he was drafted at like 10th or 11th overall.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, he's a top 15 pick. He should make an impact right away. That's not how it goes sometimes. And I think Ottawa, like we need to just be a little bit more patient because again, Joey Daccord, Christian Jaros, Christian Jaros has more games than Logan Brown and Christian Wolanin, and he's on the fence. And same with Schlapping, is that there's a lot of guys who have more games than Logan Brown who are still on the fence. The same goes with, Drake Batherson, is that Drake Batherson has more games than Logan Brown. He has 10 more points in like 13, 14 more games. But he's still on the fence. He's not guaranteed a roster spot. He was sent down. He was playing fourth line when at the beginning of the year last year. Like he's not guaranteed a roster spot. And none of these prospects are. As much as we want to say, oh, Norris and Batherson, and as high as we are on them, none of them are guaranteed a part. Like anyone who's on a two-way contract is basically not guaranteed a contract, or guaranteed a roster spot. And it's just like, maybe we need to temper expectations a little bit as a fan base. Maybe we have to just kind of realize that, hey, there's a plan in place. And if you're going to perform, you're going to get the spot. And I think it just comes down to the roster spots available and how they're going to perform in camp.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's not many spots left. And one of the interesting things being floated out there, we know that, if you're coming into camp, you've got to perform and you've got to earn a spot. I think they've made that clear. What's your opinion on the Frank Saravelli rumor that Ottawa could potentially be adding Corey Perry?
Okay, so this is funny because I remember, I made a tweet out October 12th, basically being like, how do Ottawa fans feel about Corey Perry? Because this was just after Toffoli signed with Montreal, and we were like, this was before the Dadonov signing, and I believe before or just after the Watson trade, and it's just like, how would you feel about adding Corey Perry? If you really look at Batherson being our top 6 right winger, and Dadonov aside, like if we weren't going to bring Dadonov in, you're most likely going to have Connor Brown playing the second line wing or whatever. Would you really feel confident in having a right wing that had Batherson, Brown, and just Watson, and then having a third? Like in terms of confidence, I wouldn't really be confident in that. I would love to have a guy like Perry in. With the Dadonov signing, I don't think it's necessary, but never say never at this point, right? Like, if he's willing to come on like a good contract, understands his role and what he's going to bring to the table, and he just wants to play, I'm all for it. It would mean that Batherson would need to work just as hard as to make the team. Could there be a chance that if he's not signed by training camp, we could bring him in on PDO? That has to be a possibility as well, to kind of bring some camp competitiveness to camp. And I think it shouldn't be ruled out, but I wouldn't be very high on the possibility of happening right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's probably something where they did have mutual interest at one point in time, but then, like you said, Watson was brought in and Dadonov was brought in, and all of a sudden things are pretty full. If we're considering Drake Batherson a lock at the second line or third line right wing position, I would be interested. I mean, it would be a lot of fun having Brady Tkachuk and Corey Perry on the same team. Very similar players, and Brady Tkachuk is kind of, Corey Perry is kind of what you're hoping Brady Tkachuk turns into at some point in his career. Very similar playing style. So, I mean, it would be a lot of fun. But I don't know necessarily if it's something that is an old rumor that just kind of resurfaced or what happened there, but I would be quite surprised if it happened.
Yeah, 100%. I think if you look at the roster makeup of the team right now, he just doesn't fit. But again, with this team, you can really never say never. People didn't see some of the moves happening, especially the Dadonov signing. I don't think anyone really expected that. I think when it happened, everyone was like, oh my God, what just happened? They're actually spending money. It's the same thing with the Matt Murray trade. No one really saw it coming. There was rumors and whatnot, but, rumors are rumors. Until it actually happens, no one can really guarantee that it's happening. So, I think with the Corey Perry thing is that it needs to be taken seriously. I think there was a serious consideration to bring him on, and with the uncertainty of the season, who knows what happens? Maybe they do bring him on, maybe they don't. If they are allowed to carry more players than the 23, maybe they decide to bring him in as an insurance sparker. It really depends on how the next couple of months plan out.
Yeah, definitely an interesting next couple of months. In my opinion, it looks done. Like, this looks like a finished product. But as you said, I mean, anything can happen. It's a different kind of time right now. And we need to talk about someone that was recently brought in as well.
Yeah, we do. I think I've made it on Twitter and whatnot. I've been a huge supporter of this signing. I was up on this signing in June or July, where I was like, this guy would fit in perfectly, and people ridiculed me for it, being like, oh, he's nothing, he won't fit, whatnot. Man, Alex Galchenyuk, 1 year, $1.05 million. That is personally a steal of a contract.
Yeah, it's not even a low risk deal. It's a no risk deal. You're bringing a guy in for just over $1 million. If DJ Smith finds that he doesn't want to play Galchenyuk, and Galchenyuk's not performing, and he's not battling, and he's not working his butt off, then guess who's riding the pine? Alex Galchenyuk. You don't have to play a player that's making $1 million. There's no on a 1 year deal. There's no guarantee there. So for me, it's roster competition, and if things work out, it has potential to really work out, much like the Duclair thing. But you're not paying a guy 5 years at $5 million for inconsistency. You're paying a guy $1 million for 1 year. It's an amazing contract.
And if you look at numbers, Galchenyuk's the better player of the two. 320 points in 549 games. He's had 5 straight seasons up until last year of 40 plus points. He had 24 points last year in 59 games, which would have had him higher than some of the players in Ottawa. He would have been 8th or 9th or 7 or 8 in Ottawa scoring. So $1 million for a guy a guy who's put up points, who can play in your middle six, power play, penalty kill. Personally, I think we have we have an upgrade over Duclair. I know how much of a Duclair fan you are, but personally, I look at the two players, and I think Galchenyuk just brings more consistency. And if he can find rhythm with whoever down the middle, or if he's playing in the middle, it brings us more versatility, because, okay, you can put him on the left wing. If someone gets hurt in the middle, you can slide him over in the middle. It just brings you more versatility, which with this so much uncertainty, that's what you need.
Exactly what you said. And I think about it in camp too. So you have probably 2 open roster spots, if we're looking at it right now, for about 7 players battling for those spots. And I'll list the players, and 2 of these players, at least 2 of them, are centers. So if they make the team, you could slot Galchenyuk to the left wing. And if the left wingers here make the team, you could slot Galchenyuk at center. So adding that versatility, like you said, over Duclair, it's a really smart move. So the players battling for the 2 open spots that I see right now, either a center position or a left wing position, Timmy Stützle, Josh Norris, Logan Brown, Vitaly Abramov, Philip Schlappick, Rudy Balcers, and Alex Formenton. Out of those players, who do you think makes the roster?
Balcers, because here's my thing with Balcers. If he doesn't get hurt last year, he makes the team out of camp and Batherson's sent down. If Bruce Garriock, Brent Wallace, they all said last year that Rudolph Balcers had the best camp out of any Ottawa prospect that year. And they tied, and Logan Brown, Jake Batherson didn't have good camps. And I think it's the same thing with Brannstrom. If Wolanin doesn't get hurt, Brannstrom doesn't make the opening night roster. And that's not necessarily a slight against him. That's just reality. And I think Balcers, he has a great startup overseas in, I think, Norway. He's going to carry the momentum he had in Belleville last year into camp. I think Balcers has a chance, depending on the route they want to go, to be that third or second line left winger, depending on how they want to play Galchenyuk.
Yeah. Balcers is a really good name. The one that I'm betting on the most is Tim Stützle. I think if, and it's a big if, he's able to get the contract stuff worked out and come over, I think the Senators will want to sell their 3rd overall pick to the fan base. Now, I've heard counterpoints where, some people don't believe Tim Stützle is ready and they feel like he'd be rushed a little bit. But what I will say is I would be absolutely shocked if the contract is worked out and Stützle isn't at least on the roster to start opening day, getting that 9-game sample size.
Agreed. And I think the Galchenyuk signing kind of is more of an insurance marker I think the way I look at it is I think there's a little bit, maybe a little bit more than a little bit of doubt that Stützle will be available for the team this year. I think there's growing concerns that Mannheim will not let him go if they do have a season. I think they're going to look at it as like, well, we have a season, we're going to keep him here. You can have him next year. I think there's a growing concern of that, and I think the Galchenyuk signing kind of solidified that concern because he can play the same positions that Stützle can. So if he's at camp, I think he makes it. But I'm cautiously optimistic about him being in camp to begin with.
Yeah, I think exactly what you said. There are some parallels there. They're both left wing / centers. And it is interesting that after we hear, at least some controversy with getting Stützle to sign his entry-level deal, there's definitely the potential that, that's because, or Galchenyuk is added because Tim Stützle is now not expected to make the roster. The other player I want to mention for that open spot is Vitaly Abramov. I think he's a dark horse to make it, but he is lighting it up right now in the top league in Finland. And I believe Abramov is going to do what he did last year. He's going to come to camp and steal someone's job. Last year, right off the top, he was one of their hottest players throughout preseason. What do you make of Vitaly Abramov?
Yeah, so he has 7 points in 6 games, and for Jokerit. And I mean, just to give some backstory, Jokerit, it's one of those two. They were one of the worst offenses in Liga in Finland up until he showed up. I think they had like 4 goals in their first like 3 or 4 games, and then Abramov came in and he had 4 goals in 4 periods. I think Abramov this is the beauty of Balcers and Abramov. They can both play left or right wing. And I think Nick Paul is kind of going to be slotted at that fourth third line left wing. He kind of bounced up and down a little bit, but I think he's going to be the bottom six left wing. There's no debating that. I think realistically, the only two spots that I can see that are open is your left wing 2 and your left wing 3. And who knows, maybe Galchenyuk slots in at that left wing 2. So maybe, but I think Abramov and Balcers are your two players to watch out for at camp. I think the Senators would be more than confident allowing Norris and Brown to go back to Belleville for a year. And it's not even a full year. I think that's the thing that we need to remember is that it's not going to be a full year. It's going to be like 4 months.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the decisions you have to make is that, you're going to be playing again your first time in almost a year. Would it really be beneficial for you to be up in the NHL in this weird year? Because honestly, I'm not expecting them to let's say they start, games start February 1st. And they run from February 1st, the season's from February 1st to May 1st, whatever the case. And the games, the season's done by the end of July, but they want camp again at starting in late September. Yeah. Is that really beneficial for the team and the player? Probably not. I would have no issue with them being sent back down to Belleville, having them play however long that season is in Belleville, and then be ready for training camp in the September of 2021. And I think that's kind of the decision that Dorian needs to kind of figure out on how he wants to do this. Is that, does he want a year of just, we're going to have veterans because of the uncertainty? And then you have to look at it as okay, well, if there's no AHL season, then we're going to have to get these players playing. There's a lot of work that Dorian has to do. And I don't know. I think Abramov and Balcers, they're having too good of a year, have started off too good in Europe to not be considered the two favorites to start. They, none of the other guys have been playing.
Yeah, and those two will definitely have a leg up coming into camp, just having regular games and playing against high-level competition. I think Stützle could perhaps he would make the World Juniors. He would be their captain, but he is just he will be coming off an injury and a surgery. So, again, if the contract thing works out, I expect him to be slotted in at least for the start of the season for the 9 games. If he struggles at all, I don't think they'll hesitate to send him down or send him back to Germany.
Yeah, and again, I think it would be, it's so hard to really get a point on what's going to happen because of the uncertainty around the league. Is that if Dell has a season, it's probably not going to be a very long season. In the NHL, there's talk of it being a 42 game season, just like it was in the shortened lockout year. There's so much uncertainty that looking at this roster is almost extremely hard outside of the right side. Outside of Batherson, who's going to be on the right side. Down the middle, you really know it's going to be Tierney, Colin White, and Anisimov. Most likely Galchenyuk is going to slot in down the middle. Left side, you're going to have, Paul and Tkachuk. There is a lot of uncertainty around where players are going to sit and how they're going to construct this team. So who knows what they do? Maybe they do go after a Corey Perry and they're like, hey, we're going to sign you. You're going to be our third line winger. We're going to move someone over to the left side or whatever the case may be. It's just it's
that could happen. And another point to what you were saying is, do you really want to burn Tim Stützle's entry-level contract if they are playing a 42-game season? I personally wouldn't if that's the case.
Not at all. I would, even if they were playing a full 82-game season, I wouldn't want to burn. If you are playing a full 82-game season, but if the NHL comes out okay, we're going to play from February 1st to June 1st. Playoffs are going to run until August, end of August. Or whatever the case may be, and then we're gonna start our season October 1st. Whatever, we're gonna have a month and a half, 2 months off. Draft will be middle of September. Training camps open up October 10th. Do you really want to burn a year of that kind of condensed schedule for someone who's never played in that kind of environment? Like the Dell season's not very long. It's also spread out a lot. Like the games are spread out. So you're going to force a kid to come overseas during a pandemic season to play a condensed 82 game season just for the turnaround to be like 3 months, two months to play a full length 82 season. I just don't see the benefit in that. I don't see the benefit in that for Stützle. I don't see the benefit for that with the team. If you let his contract slide, you don't sign him for till the 21-22 season. That also gives you an extra year of flexibility. You know, that gives you a little bit more leeway in terms of, you know, competitiveness and like when you're competing for a cup. You know, we talked about that with Ian Mendes, is that like you want to be competitive by like his third year. Well, if that third year is 23, 24, I'm okay with that.
Right. So it give you that extra year of, you know, the Senators being in their window of compete out of Stützle without burning the first year. I get that point. I think selfishly, I just want to see what he can do at the NHL level. And I would love to at least see him in camp and through preseason. And if that's it, so be it. Like, I don't mind, like you said, I don't mind seeing him get sent back to Germany and develop there. And some people actually think that that's what's best for him.
Agreed. I mean, I looked at this draft class and there was only really two players in my mind that could step into the NHL right away. And one of them went to New York and the other one went to Minnesota.
Marco Rossi.
Yeah. And it's not because that they're better. I mean, Lafreniere is better than any of them, but it's not because Marco Rossi is better than Stützle.
Yeah.
It's the fact that he's been playing in North America the last 2 years. And he's used to playing on North American ice. He's also a center. Like, he's been playing center his last 2 years. He'll be playing center in Minnesota. Stützle has been flipping between wing and center in Germany. He's playing on international ice. You know, you're going to want to develop him in one of these positions first, and you want to get him used to North American ice. I don't see it being beneficial for the club to have him in Ottawa. I'd much rather him go to Belleville, really. If I had to choose between Ottawa, Belleville, or Germany, I'm sending him to Belleville 100%. And I'm like, okay, you're going to be our left winger. We're going to develop you as a left winger because we feel like right now that's our biggest need. We want to see what you can do as a left winger, and we'll move you over to center because, you know, that's just the way it is. Like, you know, if you look at our left wing, yeah, there's Balcers, Formanton, but we don't, outside of Tkachuk, we don't have that elite top six forward on the left side. You can make an argument that Norris, Pinto, Connor Brown, Colin White can be those elite top six centers. And, you know, we have Dadonov on the right side for the next 3 years. We have, you know, Batherson, hopefully he'll find his own and have a breakout season. But our left side looks relatively weak.
Yeah.
So maybe that's kind of the position they're looking at now, is like, okay, we'll bring you over to North America, but you're going to go to Belleville and play on the left side.
Yeah, and it would be kind of fun seeing a combo of Tim Stützle and Josh Norris in Belleville. I think Norris is a finisher, like he's more of a shoot first kind of guy, and to have Stützle setting him up, I think they would absolutely dominate in Belleville. It would be a lot of fun. Yeah,
I mean, if you look at a top six of, let's say Balcers makes the NHL. Let's say he's our left winger, and they bring in Corey Perry or they bring in another center, and we have a top six in Belleville of Tim Stützle, Josh Norris, and Vitaly Abramov as your first line, and your second line of Alex Formanton, Logan Brown, and Sokorov as your second line, and then you fill out the third line with, you know, you have Parker Kelly, you have Castle, you have so many of these other guys that are slotting it, and then you have Brandstrom and Lajoie on the left side.
Yeah,
you have Lassie Thompson and Christian Jaros on the right side, like. Oh. And then you have Joey DeCourt and Philip Gustafson in net. Like,
not even fair.
You're finishing, like, if you're Ottawa, you're selfishly wanting these guys to play in Belleville, to play together, to go and win a Calder Cup that they were wrongfully denied this year.
Yeah,
I'm 100% guaranteed that the Calder Cup Finals would have been Milwaukee, the Admirals versus the Senators. And that would have been one hell of a series because the only time that they played each other was, I think, in Belleville. And Belleville was missing most of their defense because it was up in Ottawa. And it's just like, I think, and that's also something you have to consider is like, okay, you know, you're not going to win in Ottawa right now. You know for a fact that Ottawa is not going to make the playoffs next year unless they play out of their mind and they somehow squeeze in. And even if that's the case, that's great. But that you don't want to do anything to deviate from the plan, even from a little success. So why not send them over? Why not let them in Belleville and win together in Belleville? You know?
Yeah.
I know it doesn't necessarily always translate to NHL success, but you still want to build that winning culture. And you started in Belleville. You let them grow in Belleville. I don't see anything wrong with it. I mean, selfishly, I want them up here, but strategically, I think having them in Belleville is probably the best thing for them.
Yeah, and aside from us, again, like selfishly wanting to see some of these, you know, Norris and Stützle and these guys transition their games to the NHL, it's probably the best for their development to play in the American Hockey League and to dominate down there. And that's what it's about right now in the rebuild. Like you said, we talked to Ian Mendes. If we're realistic about where we're at, player development is still at the first and foremost kind of where we're at right now. And you can't screw these guys' development up. Like you can't screw up a Josh Norris. You can't afford to. You can't screw up a Tim Stützle.
No, and I mean, I think it's important to remember that like Josh Norris was in his first year. Like him and Formenton were in their first year in the AHL. So, you know, why are we trying to rush these guys up? You know, Brown is only entering, I think, his fourth pro year or second or third pro year. He's still in his ELC. So he's entering his third pro year. Same with Batherson. So why are we trying? Like, I think we look too much at age. Like, they're still on their entry-level contracts. You know, they're entering their third pro year. We need to be calm. We need to be patient with these players. And I think that's the same thing with Norris. Like, they're entering their second pro year. Let them go back to Belleville, dominate again in Belleville, and just say, okay, cool. You dominated in Belleville. You enter your third pro year. And do you come up here with confidence and swagger and moxie of like, you know, we were able to win together. We were able to win together in Belleville. We can do this in here, and you're part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Right. Yeah, you want these players to be impact players at the NHL, not just players that are slotted in and, you know, trying to keep up. So ultimately, that's the hope, and you have to look at each case kind of individually and see where the players are in camp.
Agreed, and I think Balcers is going to have a dominant camp, but you know. We're over an hour, which I mean is fantastic because there's been a lot of talk about good discussions. We're going to take a quick break because when we get back, we will have our final segment of our over-under. We've been kind of hinting at it on Twitter. It'll be it's about Galchenyuk. So we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have that, and we'll wrap it up. All right. Again, if you don't know, we're part of the Hockey Podcast Network. You can find all 31 teams and much more on the Hockey Podcast Network. We're streaming on all services: YouTube, Spotify, Apple, everywhere you can find your podcast. So look it up, Hockey Podcast Network. Fantastic group of guys. We're back with Derek and Lee. For that being, you know, before the break, we've been great discussions about everything going on with the Sens. We talked about Galchenyuk, the big signing. Everyone's kind of wondering where he'll fit in. So we got our over-under, and man, this one's an interesting one because I feel like it's a two-parter with the way the season's going. So we've tweeted on it. We put it out on Twitter, the goal total for Alex Galchenyuk. And some of the replies, you know, they're like saying, oh, in like certain amount of games. So this is now a two-part question. In an 82-game season, I would have Galchenyuk looking at his career at 22 and a half goals in a full season. If we're playing an abbreviated 42-game season or whatever the case, I have him slotted in at 9.5 goals. So for the first question, for an 82-game season, if they somehow manage to pull that off, the over-under on 22.5 goals from Alex Galchenyuk, what are you taking?
I'm going to go against the grain because I've been reading some of the comments on Twitter, and I'm going to take the over. I think Galchenyuk is in a position where he needs to perform. He was just on TSN 1200 yesterday. He had a good interview on there, and he knows what he has to do. He has to be an impact player. He has to return to almost his 30-goal form that he was in Montreal. I think we're going to see a player that is going to bring it, that knows he has to perform. And I think Alex Galchenyuk is going to score 25 goals. He's going to lead the Senators in goals this season. 25-goal season. He's going to have a huge year, and Ottawa will be in a very favorable position of, either trading him at the deadline or re-signing this player.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree. I think everything looks like he's going to get top six potential. Like he's going to be situated in a top six role. For everything I've been able to find, is I don't see him being slotted in as as our third line player, and I'm excited to see what he can do. I got to take the over. I'm gonna say he hits 25 goals. I don't think he hits 30. I think he's gonna have a really good season. I think he hits over 50 points though. I think he's gonna hit like almost 60 points because I feel like he's gonna play with a lot of finishers. Drake Batherson and Rudolph Balcers on that second line. He's gonna be dishing the puck more than he's putting in the net, but I think he's still gonna get some power play goals. I'm gonna have him at 25 goals, so 2.5 over the over. So that on an 82 game season. If we're gonna talk about a 42 game season, that's a whole different kettle of fish. Yet 9.5 goals. Are you taking the over on this? I feel like you are.
I'm still going to go over. I think there's a little bit more pressure, if that's the case, for him to perform. I mean, you can't really hit dry spells on a shortened season like that. So for an inconsistent guy like Galchenyuk, I think there's some risk there. But it's only 9.5 goals. I still think he'll muster up 12 goals if we're going, with a 42 game season.
Yeah, I think. See, I want to take the over. I mean, he had 9 goals last year, I believe, in 59 games. It's just I'm going to take the under though, and it's not because I don't think he's going to perform. I still think he's going to hit 30 plus points. I just don't see him being a goal scorer consistently. I think he's going to be kind of your primary assist guy. He's going to be the guy he's going to set up a lot of goals. I don't think he's going to score a lot of goals in a 42 game season. I would take the under on this. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I think people are going to look at it as we can't even hit 10 hit double digits in goals. I think it's a kind of a one segment, but points. I think if you're going to look at the over under on points, I think the over, if you're going to look at over points on a 42 game season, I'm going to take the over if we're going to put it over 30 easily. I think he can hit 30. I think he can hit 60 points with this team. And who knows what happens? Maybe he's playing top line minutes with Tkachuk and Dadonov, right?
That's where I see him. That's exactly where I think he's going to slot in to start.
It's just there's so many unknowns, and I think obviously we're kind of early predictions. Once we kind of get once they start putting them out, because I haven't really put out anything significant. There's multiple different ones that are saying, he's going to hit 15 goals and whatnot, and until we start seeing pretty consistent numbers, it's kind of hard to really kind of get a point on it. But I think if it's an 82 game season, take the over. If you can wait until training camp, take on a 42 game season, I would do that because it really depends on where he ends up. I think if he's on the first line, I'm taking the over. If he's on the second or third line, I'm taking the under.
Yeah, it'll be about minutes and power play time as well.
But honestly, he's wearing 17, so he better perform because I don't think anyone who's worn 17 has really done anything.
David Legwand. Nope.
I think David Legwand, Max McCormick, and Jonathan Davidson are the 3 last players to wear 17, at least that come to mind.
Yep.
Oh, wait, maybe Gibbons. Did Gibbons wear 17 when he was here after that trade with Anaheim?
I think so. Let me look into it.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Man, if you ever Hockey Reference, man, they are the place to go for most of the stuff. I love Hockey Reference. They can give you everything you need for the most part.
Yeah, absolutely. I use Hockey Reference all the time for writing as well.
It's ridiculous. So they've worn 14 players have worn it. Brian Gibbons, 2019.
Okay. Yep.
Friggin' Philip Kuba is probably the most notable guy to wear 17 in Ottawa.
Yeah, the guy that was helped out the most by Erik Karlsson.
That's definitely a thing that's very true.
So basically, Alex Galchenyuk has the potential to be the best number 17 ever for Ottawa.
100%. And I mean, not hard to do.
No.
But I think, honestly, I like the prediction of him being the first line center. I think it's kind of up in the air. I think it's going to be an open competition in camp. I still think Anisimov is going to do it, though. I think I would have to pick Anisimov as my number one center if we're gonna do it.
I like that call. I really did. When you said that, I started thinking about it more and more, and I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Get that Russian connection.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe they say screw it, and for one game for train, like in preseason, if there is a preseason, they do a Russian connection, and they have Abramov, Anisimov, and Dadonov.
Yeah.
The off connection. They just go off every time they're on the ice.
Yeah, or Galchenyuk over there I know he's American Russian, but still Russian. You could have Galchenyuk, Anisimov, Dadonov.
Yeah, I just just give me the oh man, if they better for just even a game or a shift, all the Russians on the ice together, Abramov, Anisimov, Dadonov, Zaitsev, and Zub all on the ice together.
Oh my,
it'd be the new Russian five.
There you go.
I mean, obviously, they're not ever going to touch the Russian five that was in Detroit, but that honestly though, that'd be fantastic. Just all the Russians on the ice at the same time.
Yeah, I think Don Cherry would be losing his mind. He was watching it at home
with a Swedish goaltender in net.
Yeah, there you go.
The only better thing is if we drafted Askarov and had him in net, have all 6 Russians.
Perfect.
That'd be ridiculous. But anyways, guys, that's all for this episode. It was another fantastic one. Thank you, Derek, for joining us. You'll probably be joining us later this week. It's always a great discussion with you. Thank you guys for tuning in. You can follow us, Sens_hour on Twitter and Instagram. Derek at Daily075 on Twitter, myself at Shane_Ryan97 on Twitter, and give the Hockey Podcast a follow. Great content, great giveaways. Got some things, got a contest going up shortly, and you'll want to stay tuned. If you haven't, check our Twitter when it drops, because it should have dropped by now by the time you're listening to this episode. So yeah, definitely check out our Twitter and whatnot. Anything to add to that, Derek? Or
thanks, Shane, and thank you for listening.
Anyways, stay safe out there, guys. It's already November, so we got 2 months left of 2020 before we can start fresh in 2021. We'll pray for a good 2021. That's all we can say.
Yeah.
Hope y'all had a fantastic Halloween. We'll see you back here on Thursday with a brand new episode of the Sens Hour Podcast. We always go live on Twitter and YouTube, so definitely keep a tune on for that. Have a good one. We'll see you guys later.